making noises. Welcome to Canadian Art Today with your host, Constable.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on where you're watching the show from.
Exactly. Yeah.
How you doing?
Well, the sun came up and I came up, so it is good. We're having a great art day today, a nice sunny day, and keep on moving. Right? It's
Nice.
yeah. No, we're good. And leaves are falling and no snow, so life's good.
2 for 2. So, so today you have something different on the show. You have a sculpture.
We do have a sculptor, Ted Uchacz. Now,
Right.
it's a lot of people just start with raw materials of some kind to make sculpture, like whether it be clay or bronze, or they work in, I guess they're standard types of sculpture. But now in the last, let's say even 40 years, 50 years, they've been actually doing things out of reclaimed and found materials and different things. And so Ted works in and repurposed materials. He'll find stuff from wherever he can get it, like any types of unique pieces of metal. It's almost a little, I wouldn't say it's not a steampunk kind of style of work, but he's got an old world edge about him. Kind of, it reminds me of knights and queens and kings in armor and I guess medieval looking types of work. I feel like some of the stuff he's got is like would be on the Addams Family. I mean, it's just so cool. Some of these, and I'll call them. They're actually functional pieces of sculpture. You can use them as chairs or different things, but it seems that nature has really been a huge influence in him. But I can also see in his later works that his day job is influencing what he does, and we'll talk about what his day job is.
Cool. So I guess we should bring Ted in.
We should bring Ted in.
All right. Welcome, Ted.
Good morning. Good morning. I was listening to the introduction, and I do like the steampunk. Just I love the steampunk, industrial and steampunk. Yeah, that's definitely.
I think your work is definitely industrial, and it is kind of steampunk because you've put together a lot of different things. But we'll just talk about how what's going on here, and Stephen
nobody wants to see me anyway. Gentlemen, have a good show, and we'll see you at the end.
We'll see you at the end there. Yeah. Well, good morning. I see you're in your studio.
My outdoor studio. Yeah. I've been working a lot in the yard this last few months here.
Well, and I've been watching you work for quite a few years and watching you develop and the pieces getting larger. And can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and what you're doing?
You know what? I think like most artists, I started at a young age, like with an interest in art, right? Actually, my favorite toy growing up as a boy would be definitely Lego. I remember like constructing things out of Lego, just my own little creations, and drawing and painting all through like grade school and high school. If you look at any of my notebooks in high school, there was doodling all along the margins. I was constantly drawing in class. Anytime I had any spare time, I had my pen to paper and making little creations. So I think art has always been a part of my life. And then when I graduated from the College of Nursing, actually before that, let's back up just a little bit. When I was in college, actually, I took a drawing class from Bill Epp, who's a renowned Saskatchewan sculptor. So I ended up doing that as an elective while I was trying to go through the College of Nursing, and that was lots of fun, that drawing class. And then as soon as I graduated, I got more heavy into artwork, and I started making it almost like a side career.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're actually a member of the Prairie Sculptors Association as well. So
I am, yes.
And it has become, I guess, a bit more prolific there. You'd be able to show and do bigger pieces of work, and you're also working on some collaborative stuff. Can you tell us about some of those pieces a little bit?
The collaborative pieces?
Yeah, a little bit about that. And I think we can bring an image up here. I think we'll just start your images. There we go.
Yeah, so the collaborative pieces I've been working on are with a group of 3 other artists, Oriole dancer Ray Keeley and and Ellery Russell. So we're doing a project on truth and reconciliation. So that has been really exciting for me. I love the whole concept of that topic. It's such a hot topic right now here in Saskatchewan and across the country. So yeah, I'm glad to be a part of that group and to be doing something that means more than just what I usually do with my art.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, not that your art doesn't have something to say, but it's important to acknowledge what is happening in our country, from coast to coast, actually, not just in the province of Saskatchewan. So it's actually happening all around North America.
I'm very happy to be part of that dialogue and to have my say in that and to create something kind of based on that topic.
Oh, we'll look forward to seeing some of those pieces later on, not necessarily in this show, but let's just talk about some. I don't know if you can see that first piece that we got up here. I guess they're installed pieces that are wall mounted, correct?
Yeah, so I do, my primary materials that I use are clay and metal. So the metal pieces that you see in this are all like scrap pieces of metal that I found either in the scrap metal yard or farmers yards or just advertising. I sometimes advertise through Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace to find scrap metal and offer to take it away from people's places if they want. So yeah, I get my metal from all sorts of sources, but what I like to do is I like to reclaim it, shine it up, make it new again, and then put it together. And then what you see also there, the colorful part of that wall piece is handmade clay tiles. So I'm also a member of the Saskatoon Potters Guild. So I do most of my pottery work at the guild, well, kind of between the house and the guild. I do have a space within my house that I work on the pottery pieces, as well as being a member of the Potters Guild. That's where I do all my firing, is at the Potters Guild.
Right. Yeah. No, it's nice in how you've got them inlaid that they fit, so basically you build your metal sculpture first and then you would find and produce the pieces for the inside, correct?
Well, sometimes I actually even make the tiles first. Sometimes I just like trying to make interesting tiles, and then I can take that scrap metal and I can cut it and shape it into just basically fit the tiles, actually. So usually it's the tiles that come first and the metal second, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So, and I see the clay is kind of like the focal point really of these pieces, because you've got the metal kind of backing it, and then you have these the color and the texture of the tiles kind of drawing your eye in.
Yeah, they almost have a mobile feel about them, this Kandinsky kind of feeling that they're light. I mean, they come off the wall, and some of the structures are very these ones are very structured. They're not very organic looking, but I think they really have a nice feel. Like, I found some of your work it feels very medieval. We'll get into some of those pieces later on, but these are some more contemporary pieces that you have right now. So it almost looks like a chain with a grenade on the bottom of that. Or am I reading that right? Is that what that is?
There's a chain. Yeah, there's a chain hanging down, and I don't know what that piece of material is. It's just a found piece that was given to me that I loved, so I kind of wanted to incorporate it on a piece. And for the last about 5 years, I occasionally do this where I hang something off of a chain on the piece and just let it dangle there. But yeah, I kind of refer to these kind of as wall sculptures. Really, they're more than just like a wall tile. It's like with the three-dimensional aspect of it, I almost feel like it's like a wall sculpture.
Yeah, they almost have a timepiece, old clock timepiece, a little bit about it. But I like the tension especially this one. I like the tension between the stopping part at the bottom and the suspended shape that is a little brass piece. Probably looks like almost like a brass piece is hanging down.
Yeah, so that brass piece is actually the tumbler for a lock, or I'm not sure if that's the right term, but where the key fits in, it's the keyhole part of a lock of a door. Okay. And then inside that little cup is actually, you can't really see it there, but there's a little key inside the cup that matches that lock.
Yeah. So they are talking to each other. Like, the piece is actually telling a story in some sense. So do you have an idea, or do you just assemble stuff, or do you have an idea? Like, for instance, what would this one be called? Like this piece?
Oh, now the title escapes me at the top of my head. I make so many of these, it's sometimes hard to remember the title. I have to turn it over. It has to do, I know, with like opening up and finding gateways, and something to do along that lines. But I can't remember the exact title of that particular piece.
Yeah, they weren't labeled in our pieces when we got them, so I didn't have them to put up the titles. But
I should have got you the titles. Yeah.
Well, sometimes people like to see them, but it's nice to know that there's that that sense, the gateway and the key, and they do make sense. They're very lyrical, really, when you think about it, right? The meaning for them. So they do come from an idea that you're trying to convey some things to. So what kind of pounds do these things weigh? Like, what is it? What is the weight of something like this?
Some of them get to be pretty. This piece is actually fairly light because it's not that large of a piece. But I do these pieces with discer blades and a metal framework on the discer blade. Those ones tend to get a little on the heavier side, like 10, 15 pounds almost.
Right. I think we got a couple of those coming up here, the discer blade ones.
Yeah, those I sell with a wall anchor.
So so basically 30 pounds, are they in that nature about?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's gotten to 30 pounds, but I think maybe on the upper end 20 pounds.
Yeah, so that's easy to hang on a wall with a great big spike if you have to.
Oh yeah, and I always throw the 100-pound wall anchor. I have 75 or 100-pound wall anchors in with a piece. I'll just tape that on the back for the customer so that they
nice.
use to get the piece mounted on the wall securely so it doesn't fall off.
Yeah, do not sit under sculpture.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's nice to see metal pieces that can hang on a wall. I mean, really, why? Like a lot of our work that sculptors do, they're on podiums and they can sit on a table in the office or in a living room or such. I guess this could as well, in some sense. So you could figure out a way of having it just sit on a table. But being that it is meant for a wall, it is kind of cool. It would look really great in a corporate office. It's one of those. Remember the one where the balls that you hit and they all bang each other? They become this the toy the executive could play with. You could move that little bell or the little lock piece with this thing. You would swing there for hours, right? It's just kind of. I like that it's touchable, right? And a lot of your sculpture is. Feel free to touch it. Look at it, move it around, and things. So these ones would kind of encourages people to interact with your piece of work.
Absolutely, yeah. And I like when people can interact with a piece. It makes it that much more fun for the viewer.
Yeah. So I found that a lot your work. I guess I get this feeling as we're moving through these things. They're becoming more medieval. Like they feel like they're shields or sense of heraldry. What is your background from?
So, well, I grew up here in Saskatchewan on a farm, actually. So some of the materials that I use too take me back to my childhood a little bit, right? So that the bigger piece on that piece that we're looking at right now on the screen is a discer blade. And my dad had a discer seeder back in the day when I was growing up. And then eventually switched to an air seeder. But when I was a young boy, he used the discer seeder. So for me, this is an implement to get the seed into the ground and grow the crop. And so it has that meaning a bit, right? It takes me back to my childhood. And I like to celebrate that past of my life. I mean, I'm not doing that now with my life. I decided farming wasn't for me. But I still like to celebrate where I come from and my background a little bit. And then with this particular one, this has more of I have an interest in circles for sure. As far as geometrical shapes, my favorite shape is the circle, and that'll come up time and again in my work. I keep going back to the circle form or straight lines. I like my perpendicular lines intersecting one another. I think this year I'm going to try to challenge myself with a few more, different angles other than the right angle, and kind of play with some different shapes. Actually, the triangle I want to bring into my work a little bit too, but for some reason, the circle's always kind of been there in a lot of my work.
Right.
Just because
the nice thing with the circle, though, if you look at it obliquely on the angle, it's not a circle anymore. It's an oval.
It changes.
Right? It changes on you, and but this piece is lovely. It feels very celestial to me. It feels like the moon and the passing of the planets. And remember how in school you used to see that planet with the other planets are going around around Earth, right around the sun.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing there, and I remember in one classroom it was a kinetic sculpture almost, and these things floated and they just kind of moved in the air in the classroom. And I always thought that was kind of cool how they figured out how to do that, and because you always saw in the science magazines or your science book of the positioning of the planets, right?
And it's funny you should say that, because this is like a lot of these disco blade pieces with the circles in it are a nod to outer space and have basically a cosmos kind of theme to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going for with this particular piece. Actually, the first piece I made is called Blue Moon. So, yeah, there's a lot of the disco blade pieces I have done have that space theme to them.
But then you're also influenced by nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nature seems to be like, we'll get into some of those other pieces later on a little bit. You didn't send me as many of those nature pieces. It's really when you have a diverse repertoire, it's nice to keep it in context. But as an abstract artist, it's still quite literal. So in this disco blade, did you weld up on that and then grind back in, or did you actually just?
Yeah, with a cutting disc attachment on the angle grinder, I cut the grooves in the disco blade, and then I like to keep different thicknesses of grinding and cutting discs with me, so then I can get different textures. So I like to texture the metal. Most of my pieces will feature a little bit of texture that I've added with the angle grinder.
Right. Yeah. Lots of grinding.
Lots and lots of grinding work. Oh yeah,
Really?
Probably 90% of the job for me to make a sculpture is the grinding work, whether it's the initial cleaning of the metal or cutting the grooves in it, and then there's also cleaning up the welds, right? So all of the grinding work that is done, I'd say 90 to 95% of the time on my pieces would be with the angle grinder and cleaning.
Yeah, I find it's so important with repurposed materials to get down to a nice clean edge where you can weld. And the sourcing of materials that will weld well together becomes really important. Like trying to weld something to cast, for instance, is a
cast is so I usually try to avoid cast and just throw that in the scrap pile.
Yeah, it's for weight.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
It's for weight. No, this is I like this piece. Here's another one. Yeah, this one I like is a little different because now the background circle is dark rather than bright and shiny like our previous one, what was playing up the light. Now this one tends to be focusing quite strongly on what is applied to the circle background.
And so this is actually the very first piece I made. So this is Blue Moon. Is the title of this piece, and that's kind of what got me going. Once I made this disco blade piece, I was hooked, and I think I'm at number 17 now I've made of these, and this series of pieces, these disco blade pieces. And this one, I like the contrast. So for me, when I'm creating a metal piece, I like the rusty look, which is really, that's just rust. The disco blade underneath is rusted and then clear coated to protect it, so you don't get that powdery rust on your hands when you're handling it. But yeah, so combination of rust and shiny metal. I love those two colors of metal. I'll occasionally paint a piece, and some people are really effective with painting a sculptural piece, like R.B. Kepler. I like his work with his painted metal. But for me, I'm more of a rust and shiny metal guy. That's my kind of my shtick, where I like to finalize my pieces. Yeah.
No, this one has there's a really nice sense about this. This feels very very industrial, as if you're in I guess what do you call it? A processing plant that would have pipes and fittings and all these kinds of structures that are vertical, and a mass of pipes that say industry, right? And whether you're refining a product of oil or whatever, they have these refineries that have this tubes and I guess they're pipes and fittings, and it's sort of like a little a maquette, for doing a large project, right?
Yeah, it kind of almost has, I feel like I go down to the basement floors in the hospital, and you see the pipes and all the fittings. Yeah, it feels a little bit like that too. Yeah.
The dark thing feels like a void, like there's this black hole in space, and these floaty things are in front of it. You really have a strong celestial aspect to a lot of these circle pieces, because we relate to the shape of the sun, the moon, what are those things, right? And it's just there every day for us to see. And I think this one has I even like the shadow on the wall. Like the shadow on the wall becomes a centering point, and it really settles the piece down nicely. And it also gives a nice half moon or quarter moon feel a little bit on the bottom. It's just maybe that's where some of that is coming. Your mind thinks about things differently when you look at a piece. And this I like because it looks different when you come from straight on, from the right or from the left, and everything changes, right? And the thing
Even when
is,
you're sitting up or sitting down or standing up, and you're like looking at the piece while you're doing it, it changes. I like that about the wall sculptural piece, and having pieces further out than other pieces, and then as you're moving around the piece, it changes.
exactly, yeah. Where if you're working with a painting or a two-dimensional piece, yes, it'll have a bit of a feeling of difference, but not so much in an abstract piece. But this one really plays on your mind because it changes the position of the structures that in the foreground with the background. Because right now they're centered, but if you go far left or far right, it positions them farther over in the circle, right? So
True.
it's just which is a really nice effect. A lot of people are looking for a piece of work that is a conversation piece, but changes all the time. Lighting as well. These kinds of pieces add huge value. Like you can sit for hours and see this thing and then move and walk and change. And the light hits it, it shines, it sparkles, it does whatever, right? Or in the evening, it'll look a little different if you can adjust your lights to give it a feeling. So these are things you don't get in a digital situation, or a painting. These have a really nice, I think they got nice movement in them as well. Oh, this one. This one, I've seen this one, and I didn't sit in the chair. I was going to, but I know some beautiful ladies did sit in the chair.
It's actually surprisingly comfortable for what it looks. It doesn't look like it would be comfortable, but it's actually quite a comfortable chair.
Yeah, well, the tractor seat is the tractor that's molded for you, and a lot of them that was the seat. There was no cushion or anything, and you sit all day out in an open tractor on that seat. They had a spring on it, but basically that was it.
Oh yeah. And there's
But
actually a few nods to farm equipment there, because you got the tractor seat, then you got the disker blade at the lower part, and then swather guards as the feet all around it. So
yes, I saw that. You don't drag this chair across your hardwood floor.
you definitely don't do that. No, this is a chair you want to pick up and set down very gingerly.
Yeah.
For me, it's meant as an outdoor piece. I have it in my patio outside.
Yeah. No, I see you sitting in it. Actually, you're just sitting it in your. But I find that I think part of your nursing career has come back into this with this skeletal
backbone.
Backbone, and it's nice that you can work with your. I guess as a nurse, you can work with your vocation a little bit. Where you work at the hospital, and you see different things all the time, whether it's an X-ray or whatever, right? And you can, I guess, the influences come from where you are daily, I suppose. Correct? I don't know.
Oh yeah, like growing up, I mean, for me, the two loves were art and science. So, and that's why I ended up with in probably nursing as a career, because I loved science, I loved anatomy, physiology. Those classes, those were big draws for me. I always found that that's such fascinating material, biology and science. So so anatomy, I've done a number of pieces through the years. I don't think I sent you a lot of images of those particular pieces. But I've done hearts, I've done all sorts. Actually, for one lady whose daughter was going through the College of Medicine, she wanted an intestine sculpture. So I don't know if anyone has ever made an intestine sculpture before, but I made one of those.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see for sure. So what were the influences on this piece? What was it for the spine? Where did that idea kind of come from? You moved from you're building wall sculpture, but you're also now building, I guess, monumental types of sculpture where they can sit in your yard, or actually this could sit in a house as well if you want. If you had a little piece of round plywood, you put it on of some kind, you could sit it anywhere you would like, I guess. If you're the Addams family, it's like.
And sometimes, to be honest, this piece kind of evolved as I went. Like the backbone for the backing of the chair was not the initial plan. I had a different plan drawn up, but decided to change it to the backbone because it just felt right. I found a piece of metal in my yard that was screaming backbone to me. So I was like, you know what? This chair is not complete. Basically, at the point I had the seat on. I had pretty much all the structure except for the backing of the chair was done. And then I changed the plan. Basically, it's one of those things where I found a piece of metal and I thought, well, this is going to look amazing if I do a backbone structure on the back of this chair. And I just went with it. So
it definitely does. I mean, it really sets it off. And I guess there's a bit of a shock factor. I mean, but it marries nicely with the claws on the bottom. They feel very like claw-like, bird-like types of natural things that way. And again, the circle is part of your go-to shape, I guess, which is the base.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the tractor seat kind of had a feel of like a hip bone. And I think that's kind of what
it does. Yeah, you're right.
Pelvis kind of slightly. So yeah, I kind of thought, well, the backbone might fit really nicely.
Yeah, no, it's it is and this one does definitely feel medieval. It feels like you want to be a vampire and that's your chair. It's like yeah, it'll definitely be cool at Halloween, when you get to
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it'd be and it looks good with a good lady sitting in it. I know that for sure. I did so where was this? Were you part? I know you were part of a group that did an exhibition and
so Sandra Epp hosted a art and fashion show. It wasn't just art, it was art and fashion down in Manitou Beach this summer. So I was a part of that organization, or that group of artists that were producing chairs. And now I can't take credit for the fashion. My girlfriend Yubi, she was the one that created the fashions for this show to go along with my chairs. And I think everybody for the most part did the fashions to go with their individual chairs. But yeah, for my 3 chairs that I displayed on that day at the fashion art chair show, it was Yubi that did the fashion for the chairs, and I just focused on the chairs.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many chairs were there, 20, 30 chairs in that show?
There's quite a few, around that mark. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a good turnout, really good turnout.
So it was called Chairs on the Beach?
Chairs on the Beach, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's nice to have things to work on, right? You got to focus. I got to produce a piece or 2 pieces, or if you get inspired more, and they're a place to display them, and people can interact with the pieces and be part of a group. I mean, some of it is about exposure, but it's also working. You can see how different people work differently, how they think differently, and yet they'll decorate their chair in somewhat their style.
Absolutely.
Which is very cool. And it's a great thing to do if you're trying to find your style as to who you are, is to do something like that. That's what I sort of got out of Sanders. I never got down to see the show. I saw pieces online, but I found that certain people, every chair was massively different. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah. Quite a variety. It was a really impressive show.
Yeah, it's a small community, and it's a big draw for people when they. And it's warm outside and it's on the beach. It's kind of nice that they can be able to do that. Well, you couldn't do that in the city. It's really hard to allocate a chunk of the riverbank or something for your event. But in a small community, you can do things like that. They all are inclusive and they somewhat supportive of those kind of ventures that you're doing. So this was one of the other chairs that you did, the one that we're looking at now?
So this one I called. Yeah, so it's got a cedar seat, and the rest is all found metal pieces. Yeah.
Right. Well, I hear the airplane going on.
Sorry, this plane passing overhead. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, right over. I never said a word. I waited until the plane went by. This one I added there's an aerial shot looking down.
Oh yeah.
And off that kind of gear race that's at the top. And this one, sorry. I like this rivet look that holds everything together. Is that what they were? Do you put rivets in there?
That was it was found like that. It was from a farmer's yard, actually. One of my coworkers, her husband's a farmer, and so I went out to their yard and was looking through some of the stuff that he had that he didn't need. So this is just something that I picked up from a farmyard, actually.
So it was intact then?
It was intact like that. I have a feeling it might be off a swather. I'm not 100% sure exactly what that particular piece is from.
Good find.
Yeah, it was a very good find. Very excited. I have more of that material yet to go, so I think I'll be making a few more pieces using that riveted. Yeah, because I love that.
That's what inspires a lot of this working with repurposed materials is we have a good friend that he says if you find a claw, you make a bird. If you
Yeah,
find a fin, you make a fish, right?
exactly.
And I think this is where this kind of thing. There's an excitement when you can see certain things that in your mind that put them together,
Oh yeah.
and you can build a product that says, "Oh, that's cool," and it's fresh and new from materials that were reused. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that repurposing, upcycling as they call it, right? Or recycling, upcycling of the metal and taking something old and making it new again.
Well,
Most
we
stuff has quite a layer of rust on it when I bring it home. It's quite rusted out. But then yeah, it's nice to get it in the shop and clean it up and bring it back to life.
we discard so much stuff. Like we collect things. Planned obsolescence has created vast amounts of waste. You go to a farmyard, this stuff's laying in the long grass. I mean, it's dangerous to start with, but
Yeah.
you can't move around. I mean, an old set of harrows upside down is dangerous as all get out, right? I mean, the grass, you can't see it. So it's good to gather. It's good to have people that come around, gather up stuff. And artists, it's a gold mine for artists. I know sculptors are always looking for that. I think there's more of this being done than ever. People have really unique ways of um, assemblage, I'll call it, right?
Oh yeah.
They put things together. You have a look that goes from wall pieces to um, outdoor pieces, and this is typical of one. I guess this was one at one of the galleries locally here that you had displayed.
Yeah. So that picture is taken at the Backdoor Gallery.
Right.
Yeah, here in Saskatoon, and yeah, I actually just sold that piece recently. So exciting for me as an artist to be able to sell a little bit of work.
Yeah,
it
pays for the gas to drive around and find this stuff.
It does.
It's funny how we equate. Artists are so happy for the sale. We're just so happy to break even sometimes. I don't think we even know what break even is. I have no idea with some of this stuff. You put so many hours and love into what you're doing. It's more about producing something.
It's what it's a passion, right? It's what we love, right? As artists, is to make something, to be creative, and to make something that didn't exist before, right? To take something, take raw materials and turn it to something beautiful.
Right. And it's nice that other people appreciate that, and they open their wallet, and that shows the ultimate appreciation, saying, I want to take that home. I want to live with that for a long, long time. So does this piece move within itself like a gyroscope?
Spin on its just one part moves. It just spins on the axis. The big circle will spin around the base.
Right.
That's the extent. That was the very first kinetic piece I've ever made. I've never made a piece that had kinetic movement to it. So yeah, so I think I might do a little more of that in the future. It was kind of fun, and make maybe even the inner pieces move a little bit too, right?
If you get them to move, they're a little gyroscopic, right? They kind of
I think it'd be fun to do a piece like that.
Yeah, no, and I like that you can see through it, and it is of the pieces. It's probably organic as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with metals like that. So does that have a meaning in this piece? Like you've got this centerpiece is that ceramic that's in the middle?
No, that's actually so I have this translucent series of paints that I buy from Walker Automotive here in Saskatoon. So it's kind of cool. So you can shine up your metal, and then you can put your translucent paint. So they have red, green, yellow, blue, purple. I think those are 3, 4, 5 colors. I guess they have 5 colors. And so I like that when you can spray the metal and you can still see the grind work underneath, and you still see the shiny silver underneath, and it basically creates a metallic
right.
Really,
so it's transparent. It's transparent.
Yeah. Transparent paint. So I've done that with a few pieces. I like that little hint of color in some of the metal pieces.
Yeah, the red works really well, especially in a green environment. It really pops. But I like the circles against what is in the background. It makes it stand out, even though it's more linear, this piece, because you can go through it and around it. There's no these large masses blocking your vision, right? Like a wall piece. This one does really play nicely in a yard. It's big, but it's not overwhelmingly big, you know what I mean? Because you can see through it. So a person can, I can see that a person can put it in even a smaller yard, appreciate the sculpture, and it's not just blocking the sun kind of a sculpture, right? You're kind of, it's part of it.
And this particular piece was influenced again by science a little bit. This is based on neutrons and protons and the microscopic kind of world. So, and then blowing it up to a big sculptural piece.
Right. Yeah, I can see that for sure. No. Have you made a sundial yet? Have you made sundial?
Not yet. I actually thought about that. That's one thing that's on a possible to-do list for me. Yeah.
Yeah, they would be very funky, and I think people are kind of going back to that a little bit. Just you're working in your garden or your yard, and you can look up and see what time it is. Like it's just kind of cool. Instead of looking at your phone or your watch, you just, you know, for a few hours anyway while the sun is there.
Yeah, especially if it's a beautiful sculptural piece, and yeah,
it would be kind of a cool piece. So I've seen some of these pieces that you've over the last 5 years. I think.
Oh yeah, those have been since basically since I started working with clay. The first thing I sculpted when I picked up a box of clay was an apple, and the pear wasn't long after that. So pears and apples have been part of my repertoire right from the beginning, and they still are quite popular in the galleries and with customers. So yeah. I continue with that. The tree part, but the little trees and the little branches that I do with apples and pears, I haven't been doing them quite as long, but those are even 7 or 8 years in the making, I think, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they have
to play the apples and pears other than just on their own. I want to make more of a sculpture out of it, I guess.
Yeah, I like these because they have this feeling of life and death a little bit, right? There's not so much death, dormancy, where you have this stick nature.
It's like, yeah, it's just the branches.
We've got a bit of wind in on your mic here, but I think it's, but that's what makes it pop, right? And I think there's. And this one is nice. It's got that little kink in the branch or in the trunk of the tree, and they become they're ornamental, but they don't block a huge amount of someone's living room or space, but they do conjure up a feeling of, well, that ripe red apple, it's ready to be picked, and the tree is ready to go back into the fall dormancy of winter a little bit. So I don't know. You can read a lot into. Apples are a huge part of our history as far as right from Adam and Eve kind of a thing, the good, the evil, and I just think it looks really. I've always liked it because there's somewhat of a round shape. They're very organic looking. We relate to what an apple is. We can see it looks like one. Want to bite it? You want to go near it and look at it. So it asks a lot of questions. So it's kind of cool. But do you have anything else to how this piece was produced? Like, is it a matter of welding just?
It's a lot of tapering, so a lot of like using the bench vise, putting a straight rod in the bench vise and then tapering it, and that piece, it'd be lots of little pieces of rod, right? I'm just doing a little quick count, probably about 12 or better pieces of rod, because you start thick and you go thinner, and then you're tapering each piece and then putting it all together and then cleaning up the welds. Surprisingly time consuming piece. It doesn't look like it should take a lot of time, but just cleaning up and tapering each branch tip takes a little bit of time. And it's not just the branch tip, it's even like the central part. I always taper it kind of at the end too, even if it's not the branch end. I like to taper it as it goes up a little bit, so it's just a lot of grinding work on those branches to get it looking more natural, right? You don't want just like a straight rod and then you just want and then the bending work doesn't take much time to bend it and twist it into shape. But
I like the feeling is the scale is out of whack a little bit with the size of the apple.
True. Yeah.
But I like that. I really, the apples become probably more important in the piece because of it, and the tree becomes the support for the apples, right? There's this conversation again. I'm always about conversations within works. When you buy an apple, and we got a picture of 3 of them off to the left there. They say something different. If you were to take those 3 apples, of which you probably sell individually, and they would sit on in a vessel or on a tray or someplace on your vanity or night table, or even in the dining room somewhere. You could have them as an ornamental thing where you can feel when you've got them suspended, they look lighter. They have a different, these apples have space between them now where the other ones were close together. So how you position them changes everything, right? How
Oh, it
you,
does.
yeah. So it's great to have sculpture because you can move stuff around. A painting, you can't. A painting is on that wall. You can take stuff away from it and give presence to it, or you can add stuff around it, and it's part of the wall. Sculpture um, adds another element to it, like it's a zing, a tasty thing. So the apples are basically ceramic.
Yes, ceramic apples and the rest metal.
Yeah. So the metal stems, they would have metal stems.
And metal stems too, yeah, which I
Yeah.
taper the metal stems. When I'm making a hole in an apple or pear, that I always taper it with a paintbrush handle. So then you get that tapered effect, and then it kind of at one point when you taper the stem that's going into the apple or pear, you know you're going to get a nice lock on that once you get
Yeah.
just
Otherwise,
lock in there.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I usually just use epoxy resin to hold the stem in with the ceramic piece. And what I've also done, as far as an improvement, like I first started doing the tapering of the metal and using the paintbrush handle. That was where I started. But then I started actually with my Dremel tool now, cutting horizontal slits all around that stem at where it fits into the pear or apple. So then the epoxy is more to grab onto. So,
Right.
yeah, you're pretty much pulling that thing. You could give it all your might. It probably is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. This one would be this sculpture would be so neat if you had a few pears laying on their side underneath that tree.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Which, that becomes, you're creating conversation, excitement within people when they look at that. They say, well, "That's such a funny, cool idea," right? And they say that it helps them think about how they would display it in their home, in their office, and they kind of think, you're now giving it to them to make conversation, right? And I think,
Oh yes.
and now it's one of those pieces. Once they get hooked on it, they would never give this away. It would stay with them forever. It was one of those things because it's so personal, easily personalized to them.
Yes.
And I think that's I guess it's always about that, the conversation. Um, and people like this one's kind of neat. The yellow color, against the steel. It has the ripe pear, right? And we've got some other ones that are different colors of green.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exact. Again, enough. This is a very organic shape, and it is very feminine in a way. It has a very, that feeling is just really nice and soft, and it probably goes well with the angles of the tree, because they go in and out and they're curved, nicely. But that's a lovely piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to mix up the glazes a little bit. Like I usually layering 2 or 3 glazes on each piece, whether it's an apple or pear. I usually like to layer the glazes, yeah, rather than just using one. And then you're getting different results, right? You're giving the customer something different every time, right?
And all this stuff, they can see this stuff on your website too, I would imagine. Most of it, or some of
Yeah,
it.
I'm kind of developing a website right now. It's not. I do have it up and running, but it's kind of a work in progress. My website.
Yeah. So the galleries you have would have.
Oh yeah, the gallery websites for sure. Yeah, the Saskatchewan Craft Council. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you had links to them, I guess would be fine. Well, this is I saw you working. I saw this piece similar to this in a recent show. Can you tell us a little bit about the repurposing here and what you're working with?
Yeah, so this is my movement now into silverware. I've been kind of on the hunt for silverware. I've kind of gotten, I guess, and I've found a new interest in doing silverware animals. Now, this is the second piece now I've done out of silverware, and it's actually the most recent piece. That's the last piece I created, actually, was that particular bird. But I have actually 5 more tail feathers made. I'm going to be doing at least 5 more of these birds. And then I want to do a few other like animals and insects, I think, out of spoons and forks and knives, and just repurposing silverware.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of well-known artists that work in that kind of material. They might be hoarding all of your spoons and knives and forks.
I kind of, when I raided the thrift store in Warman, I was up visiting the Warman Art Center in Ray, and ended up going over to the thrift store, and I pretty much bought out every single spoon they had there, as well as a whole bunch of other silverware. Yeah. Anything that was furious.
Well, yeah. Well, I know there's lots of it around. I think there's in garage sales and all kinds of places to source material.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, if anybody is interested in birds and sculpture, definitely contact Ted, and we will we'll continue to promote and show and expose. And there he is.
Very cool stuff, I must say. See, this is why I'm not in 40 minutes of the show, because that's all I'd say, and you guys actually discuss your stuff. So here's my question, and Paul already knows what I'm going to ask. So if someone wants to buy, whether it's the chair, the bird, or any of your stuff, what's your sculpture start at? Like, what's the bottom price, and what's it go up to?
Well, for a simple, small little apple or pear, you're looking more like $25 price point. So that's the more affordable kind of pieces. The commander chair that I'm sitting in right now, the one with the backbone, and that one's like a $5,000 piece. A lot of hours went into that particular piece. So you create, particularly the backbone, actually part of the chair was quite time consuming, and the feet actually too, because each individual swather guard that make up the feet of the chair had to be bent. I had to heat those and bend those into shape because they were they're too far out, and so they needed a little more downward angle, so I had to heat and bend each one of those. That was quite time consuming. What I usually do for pieces to determine costs is I'll keep a log of my time. So I'll go out in the shop and I'll work on a piece, and I'll come in the house and I'll write it down in my little log book how many hours I spent, and then I'll go back out and work on it again and come back in and then write down in the log book, add up all my hours, and then I kind of sort out my price based on what time I put into a piece.
Oh, very cool. That's
cool.
I feel so like the little bird. Yeah. No, because your time is worth money. As you guys were talking earlier, some artists don't price it high enough, and they spend hours and hours or months on it. But like your little bird.
At first I didn't have really a method to it. I just, I went by feel. I think this should be this price. Right. But nowadays I feel that, I want to get paid for my time. I put a lot of time and effort into a piece, and I want to get paid for my time on that piece. So that's how I've kind of been sorting out prices these days. Yeah.
Very cool. And like the little bird that you showed us at the end, how much would that go for?
So that was 5.5 hours. So that's $550. I kind of go $100 an hour. Taxes included in that price. Yeah.
And that's Canadian. So that's Canadian. So in the United States, it's $6. So it's perfect. So that works well for all the people in Europe and the US that want to buy your art. So the $5,000 Canadian chair, $1,250. So there you go. So it's a bargain. So it's awesome. But for Canada, it's good money. No, that's fair. Your stuff is absolutely gorgeous. So I enjoyed watching it and seeing it, and it's like I could see everything. It's that beautiful. So
thank you.
Hopefully
it's so much fun to create.
Flocking. Yeah. So, but we'll have your link to your website below, which I've already looked at, and you have one piece, which is the very first piece you showed on the website, which is the hanging piece. That you started with. So that's the one piece that's on the website. It says buy for $299, I think it is, or $229. So that piece is for sale. And then if you guys can't get a hold of Ted, reach us here and we'll put you in touch, or you can just go to his website, and I'm sure Ted can tell you what he has for sale and get you from point A to point B.
Sounds really good. Thanks.
There you go.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you. Mr. Paul, are you good?
We're good. Yeah, we'll just we can sign off and then we'll
say goodbye. Don't forget to subscribe and like everybody, and we'll see you all next week. Ted, thank you for your time. Hang out for a few seconds after the show. Do some housekeeping chores. Subscribe and like everybody. Tell your friends. Cheers.